Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. In a moment, I'll be handing over to Majdie from the ANCP team. But just before we get started, we'll go through a little bit of housekeeping. First, I can see that people have started using the chat box, which is excellent. Everybody should be able to see the chat box and use the chat box. So just type in there if you have any technical issues throughout the webinar and sort things out for you. And just before we go any further, I'll actually ask anybody out there to use the chat box to test and confirm that the sound is coming through nice and clear. Brilliant, thank you everybody. You can also use the chat box to ask any questions throughout the webinar. Just a reminder that this webinar is recorded and the recording will go up to the ACKNOWLEDGEMENT YouTube channel. I'll follow up with the link to the recording after the webinar. And speaking of after the webinar, we will ask you to stick around to just complete a short survey. It's only 5 questions at the end of the webinar, which is super helpful for us. And that's all our housekeeping. So without any further ado, I'll hand over to Majdie.
Hi everyone, and thanks Jess, and thanks so much to ACKNOWLEDGEMENT again for hosting this webinar along with our series of webinars throughout the year. We very much appreciate being able to get this information about performance reports out to you guys in this way. Today here with me in the room is Heather Fitt, who looks after the performance and quality for the ANCP, and also Jackie Lord from the performance and quality team, the ANCP again. So between the three of us, if we can't answer your question, then there is something wrong. So please feel free to let us know any queries and questions that you have throughout the day, throughout the webinar. So I want to quickly go through for you today the purpose and the quick summary of what it is that we'll cover. First off, in terms of performance reports, we're going to focus purely on the performance reports and acquittals that you are required to submit to the ANCP by the 30th of September this year and of course every year. Heather's going to provide you with a summary of the purpose of performance reports and how we use the information that you provide to us. And she's going to take you through the header level performance report form. And then following on from that, I'll take you through the project level performance report form. And we'll highlight as we go through key changes to the form as compared to last year and previous years that some of you may have done the form. Really pretty small changes all up. Finally, we'll go through just a little bit about the process of assessing performance reports and the process for submitting them. Please feel free to ask your questions as we go through the session today, and of course we'll try and remember to pause so you can ask your questions and also hopefully have time to go through any questions you might have at the end. We've only got 1 hour for today's presentation, so we're going to move through it fairly quickly and hopefully have you finish up on time. So just moving on to the next slide. Sorry, just as I bounce through to the next slide here. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight for you the difference between today's presentation and also give a plug for the ANCP Annual Reflections Workshop and also the face-to-face information sessions that we have coming up at the end of this month. Some of you have asked us what the difference was between today's presentation and the face-to-face information sessions that we're doing in Melbourne on the 20th of August, Monday the 20th of August, and in Sydney on Thursday the 23rd of August. Those information sessions on the 20th and the 23rd of August respectively are going to cover 3 things that you hopefully have seen in the invitation that went out. The first is an opportunity for NGOs to participate in a DFAT consultation session on the development of a preventing sexual exploitation and abuse policy, a policy that will apply to DFAT funded partners. So it's a great opportunity for you to come and have your say on those matters, on a policy that is going to affect you. So we really strongly recommend, if you've got the opportunity to be there, that you are there to participate in that. The second part of the day will be an information session on the new accreditation criteria. I know many of you participated in the accreditation webinar that was presented a couple of weeks ago, and it will follow a similar format on that. However, between the members of the accreditation team, DFAT's accreditation team, plus also the accreditation assessor that will be there on the day, it really gives you an opportunity to ask specific information about the accreditation criteria and the accreditation process. And that team, the ANCP team and the accreditation assessor, will be available for one-on-one discussions if you've got your accreditation coming up in the near future and you have some very specific individual questions you want to ask. That is going to be your opportunity to ask that. And then finally, the ANCP information sessions that are going to be in the afternoon of Monday the 20th and Thursday the 23rd of August. Yes, we will go through the performance report information, some of the information that we're going through here today, but we also wanted to take that opportunity to talk to you about some general ad plan feedback and answer any questions that you will have on your ad plans and the assessments that have been given to you or that are coming to you in the next day or so. For those that haven't received it yet, they'll be out the next day. We also want to have a specific discussion on preparing for and planning to host DFAT monitoring visits to help you be best prepared for those visits when we do come out and visit your projects. And then we'll talk about performance reports. So a big plug for those days if you're able to come. Annual reflections, of course, always is the one and only time each year that we can get together in a large group and discuss the program and the way it works at the sort of really macro level, the big picture level, and have that great, frank and robust discussion with both DFAT and all NGOs in the room together and share lessons. So we strongly recommend all of you being able to attend. We know Sydney and Melbourne is not where everyone's based, but it is one of the very few opportunities that we have each year to come together and discuss these things face to face. So really quickly, I wanted to go through the process of that DFAT takes when you submit your performance reports to us. So you submit your performance report, they are due at 5 p.m. on Sunday the 30th of September. In order to submit your performance reports to us, you just use your usual ANCP online, your usual Smarty Grants logon, and you go into the 17-18 round, so you go into your old ad plans for 17-18 and attach to your header and also attach to each of your project level forms, you'll find there's a separate tab for an acquittal. And so that's where you will find the performance report level forms for each one. I'm just going to go to a question or two comments that we've had. The first question is someone's just understood that it's really hard for them to read the font on this slide. Please don't worry, we're going to send these slides out to you all, and I think much of the information in this process I'm going to read to you now anyway. And finally, it's just said that the sound is not still bad, so we will flag that with ACKNOWLEDGEMENT. At the moment, we're wearing a headset microphone, so I think that we are definitely as close to the microphone as we're ever going to get. So we're going to push on, and I'll keep going through, and we'll ask our ACKNOWLEDGEMENT colleagues to have a little look at the sound quality for you. So on the 30th of September, after you submit your performance report to us, the team in Canberra is going to do a very quick check to make sure that it's been correctly submitted, that everything's there. If there are any immediate issues, then we are going to come back to you and ask you to very quickly in a day or two, if there are any issues in terms of dollar value or something that is quite incorrect, we're going to come back to you in those first couple of days of October. Following that, we're going to do a detailed assessment in the ANCP team in Canberra on each of their headers, the header level information that you provide us. And then we're going to do a sampled look at your project. So we won't go in and read every single project in detail, but we will take a sort of risk-based approach and read in depth a sampled level of your project. We're then going to prepare an assessment report that will come back to you, and at that stage we will invite you to submit your tranche 2 invoice to DFAT. We take all of the information that you give us, all of that performance report information, and we create a number of reports that we place on the internal DFAT intranet so that our colleagues within thematic areas and our colleagues within DFAT can read all of that information. So it will take us about probably a month to get through all of your assessments and provide that feedback to you. So towards the end of October is when we're going to be giving you your assessment reports and inviting you to submit your invoices. I'm going to hand over to Heather now, and she's going to talk in a lot more detail about the header and how we use all of this detailed information you provide us.
Thanks, Majdie, and good afternoon, everyone. I hope that I am clear enough and not distorting too much. So if it is a little bit dodgy, let us know and we'll see what we can do. So performance reports, they're pretty critical in terms of the program cycle, and for us, again, this is things that you are familiar with, but we think that it's important to highlight once again. At a project level, it really is about the accountability and it's the acquittal of that project funding. And so if we need to go back and have a look at what's happened in a project or get more detail, we go down into the project level. But more important than that in some ways, or as important, are the other two elements of why we do monitoring and evaluation and how we have used the performance reports, is the learning and the program management. So it's using the information that you collect through the performance reports to improve your programming year on year. And for us, it's about how we manage the program as a whole. So we do collect the information that you give us and we use it for our internal quality reporting processes, but also we use them then collectively to provide a snapshot, if you like, through the AID program performance report on what the program is achieving collectively as a whole. We use this information, of course, also for any briefing that we need to do for our senior executive and the secretary for their engagement or their engagement, and for any briefing that we might need to do for any of the ministers. For the NGOs who have a grant agreement above 3 million, we also do the partner performance assessments, and that's where we do an assessment of engagement over the last 12 months. So we use the information for a variety of purposes, and we also draw the information at the different levels. So what's in the header is very much around, we pull that together to present the picture of the program at the public level, and then at the project level, it seems to be, we use that for specific purposes. And the project level information is also what we use for when we do a bit of background preparation for our monitoring and engagement visits. And many of you will have seen the comms side of how we use this information over the last year as well. So the reason why we're thinking about, we do the performance report at this time of year and bringing people back to the program logic is, I suppose, to remind everyone that we are more than the sum of our parts, and this is where, certainly sitting on our side of the table, this is where we see the value is the extensive networks and linkages that you often have in country, the great work that you're doing at a project level, but also trying to think about how we bring it up and say that we are trying to have this cycle of continuous improvement to make some sort of contribution to improving living standards. So keep this program logic in mind. Think about, we do structure the header level around these outcomes so that we can use this information for presenting that aggregated picture, if you like, and then the project level is very much about what's happening with the individual over 450 projects. So on to the next slide. We're thinking about, and many of you would have heard my, well-used expression about the gold dust, but really it is, the header is about, what are the key things that you'd like to highlight over the last 12 months, so in the 17-18 period. This is where you put, if you had 5 minutes with the Minister, what would be what would you be telling her about the ANCP? So it's different from the information that you put in your ad plan. It is about trying to be around your ANCP portfolio. So it's about the few projects. You know, some of you only have a handful of projects, you know, 4 or 5. Some of you have about a dozen. Some of you have more than that. So it's about trying to pull together what's the messaging that you want to do across all of those when you're putting it in the header. So again, it's about thinking about the evidence, and we did talk a little bit about this with those of you who were at the data validation workshop the week before last. So robust evidence. So it's about getting where you've had external evaluations, where you've had independent assessment of the work that you're achieving. Adequate evidence where you've been able to do a monitoring trip and it's evidence that you've gathered, and reports that you get from your partners, records of discussions, and then weak evidence is anecdotal evidence or evidence that is non-validated assertions or opinions. So it is about trying to get as strong evidence as possible and referencing that evidence when you are pulling together your performance report header. A useful tip would be to consider the feedback that we gave you last year, and as many of you have received your ad plan feedback this year, you've probably noticed that sometimes the feedback from last year is referred to with ad plans in a similar way. We have a look, because the way we manage performance reports and ad plans in the team is we do hold an NGO or a number of NGOs for a cycle through ad plans and performance reports, and then we usually shift them around the team so that we get to know more of your work and you get to know more of us in terms of the engagement over the 12 months. So within our team, we do have a look at the feedback that was given last year and take that into account when we sit down to assess the performance reports this year. So we'd encourage you to also go back to what was provided last year. And with the changes to the forms, I think we have tried to keep these to a minimum. Hopefully you'll notice that as well, but it's something where if we have changed them, we've usually found, and again this is the learning and the program management side from our point of view, it's we haven't quite got the information we need from you to be able to report, or we think that there's probably a better way to ask the question. So when we change the forms, that's generally the reason why we've done it. So if we think about the performance report header itself, it is like an executive summary, and again, the screenshots probably are quite, the detail is quite small, but if you, this is just again when Majdie was putting together the presentation here, we put the screenshots in just so that when we publish them and send them out to you, you've got a full snapshot of what it is that we're referring to. But if you've already started looking online at the performance report forms, this is what you'll be looking at. Again, there's no changes this year to the executive summary from last year. We have put in the hyperlink to the program logic. So again, this is where the questions in the header refer back to the program logic, as you'd all be familiar with. We have this, the effective programming. It is about trying to get sure you get, you know, give us the results. What's the specific, measurable, tangible results? So look at the guidance, look at the examples that we provide, and think about how you can reference the work that you're doing and think about it across the whole of your ANCP portfolio. And where you've got great examples, we've given you the option of putting in the project ID numbers, project 1 and project 2. That's just so that you've got, you know, think of it as loads more space that you've got to give us the details, because we'll often go and look at those projects when you have highlighted ones for us to go and have a look at that you think really are the you know, jewel in the crown or the gold dust in your ANCP portfolio. With the program logic, we separated out the value for money, because in the program logic it does sit as outcome 1, but the value for money, we've separated this out, similar to last year, but it is about how you can show that the work that you're doing across your ANCP portfolio is providing value for money. The second outcome is recognising, again, that you do draw on a broad range of expertise and funding, that you do have strong connections in country with local implementing partners, that you get contributions from the Australian public and other donors. So this is about how you can expand on the diverse funding and expertise sources. And again, we know that sometimes you have an ANCP project that's able to kick off from an ANCP funding to get other funding, so you can put those where you've leveraged additional funding or expertise, put those project ID numbers in, and we can follow up. The total contributions, again, this is trying to go beyond. It's not your match, it's not the 1 to 5 match, but it's where you might be able to source additional, say, EU funding or funding through a philanthropic organisation. It's trying to give us an idea of this is how, from your ANCP grant, you've also been able to assess other funding sources. And the total contributions will be total from the other. Sorry, Majdie's just pointed out, yeah, from where you put in the project level forms. And the third outcome, and this is one where we think there's a great deal that you can bring to us. So it is thinking about how you craft your answer so that you give us your gold dust. But this is where we're wanting to know about how you're building your local partners' capacity, where you've engaged with post roundtables, as we know many of you have, or participated in monitoring and engagement visits, and not just from the team here in Canberra, but Jackie started doing the analysis, and I think we've had about 51 visits by colleagues at Post, which is, it sort of triples the amount of visits that we can do from Canberra. So we're really interested in knowing how you've found that engagement. Have a think about, in the accreditation manual, there is talk around how you're engaging in effective partnerships and building partner capacity. So this is the 250 words we've been very generous in giving you to pull that together and tell us the story around your engagement in country. Okay, this next slide is where we ask you in 300 words to basically tell us about your how you're addressing some of the cross-cutting issues and policies. And again, we there's no change from last year, but we're wanting to give you the opportunity to talk about the positive things you're doing around inclusive development or some of the other cross-cutting issues. And we also have a separate field which we haven't put up on the safeguarding. And we've got, again, the opportunity, which we haven't put in the screenshot, but to put the project numbers where you've done things that you would like to highlight at a project level. Yeah, that's the safeguards one. So again, similarly, cutting across the environmental protection, the child protection, and again, at an agency level, include the sexual exploitation and abuse. And we've got some questions at the project level, which we'll go into later. But it is those high level across your ANCP portfolio. That's how we're asking you to answer this question. This is a new question, and this is sort of following on from the safeguards issue. And I think it's a case of we are wanting more specific around management of staffing issues. I think particularly for those larger agencies who receive a partner performance assessment, we would like you to pay particular attention to this. It is mandatory for everyone to answer, but we'd like you to think about how your organisation has managed staff changes, and it could be positive or negative, like where things have, there have been issues of concern to raise them in terms of how you've dealt with them, or where there's perhaps been staff over, and since the issue around the PSEA has been at the forefront of many people's attention, if you've rolled out new training with staff or in-country partners, again, this is the space that we'd like you to address it. Now, this is after last year's agreement around the ways of working. Previously, the former partners, who were the top 10 agencies, had additional questions on partnership reporting. And this is new, following on from the agreement last year as the principles of engagement, which we have included in the program logic around the transparency, open communication and dialogue, mutual accountability for results, the continuous improvement and the respect for independence. So we agreed on those, and we also agreed that the performance report would be the opportunity that everyone would have to report against basically how you've engaged with the ANCP. It's, I guess, our shorthand way of thinking it is basically, you know, what did the ANCP do for you and what did you do for the ANCP? So putting it in that we're in this together, and we really do think we are stronger than the sum of our parts. And so using this question to provide the answers to those, how you've gone. And then we've got these, maybe if we just skip ahead. The value of the ANCP participation, I think we probably need to just slightly reorder these slides, is similar to what's the benefit to you of being in the ANCP. This is the question where we'd like to hear from you around how you've used the ANCP and the flexible nature of the program, knowing that the ANCP is quite a unique program and a unique way of funding organisations. Tell us about how you've used it to pilot or trial new approaches or leverage additional funding because you're an ANCP NGO. So many of you tell us this when we have either one-on-one conversations with you or during annual reflections or information sessions. But this is, I suppose, our way of trying to capture some of this information so that when we then pull together the aggregated report around the ANCP, we're able to say, well, actually, we've been told by the NGOs that this is that's giving us evidence which is of a more robust nature than the anecdotal one, which is, as we say, weaker evidence. And if I just go back a slide, again, the acknowledgement of ANCP, we've had a lot of work with Annabelle over the last 12 months, so I won't go over too much with this, but basically we've updated the manual and we've had webinars. So this is about how you've acknowledged the Australian government, and this is the first year that we've put it in at the header level. We've got questions at the project level, and we've asked that you put up one attachment, one example, but for larger agencies we would expect to see probably more than one file uploaded. I'll be fairly quick on this, but in the header, again, the data is fairly straightforward. There's no change. It's automatically tallied up. And the meta-evaluation or thematic evaluations, again, this is where you're doing some sort of analysis across your portfolio or across a sector, which would be of use for us to know about rather than a project-specific evaluation. We also ask for case studies, and again we've said there's a minimum of one case study rather than 3, but the larger you are, we would expect to see probably more than one, and we have often had, you know, great examples that have been submitted, and Annabelle has gone through this in terms of what makes a great case study, so I won't go over it, but we use these for various purposes, particularly when we need to provide inputs into speech or for some of the DFAT more broadly, the comms. And so by putting in we are able to run reports and filter it by the sector or the country, and so it's really important for us to be able to get this information and be able to talk about the successes of the program. So before we go into the project, is there any question on the header that we haven't yet covered? While we're waiting, it seems like so far it's reasonably straightforward. I'll hand back to Majdie for the project level discussion.
Thanks, Heather. So in terms of you'll remember that in Smarty Grants, same for the ad plan as is for the performance report, that there are accrual forms at the header level, at the program level and at the project level. We're not going to go through the program level today because only a couple of you use that sort of program option, and there literally is one box for you to tell us about the outcomes of that program. So I won't go into that today. We are going to talk just at the project level next. We've got a question here in terms of the header, which is what is required for value for money. Looking at all of the E's that go into value for money, and you'll see there in the question and the way it's structured in the header is it does specifically mention all of the E's that DFAT includes in its definition of value for money. So I'm clicking back to the slide on value for money here, and it specifically says we're looking for evidence of how you maximise value for money to ensure effective, ethical, efficient and economical use of ANCP funds. So they are all the things that we're hoping that you might address in your response to this question. This definition of value for money is on DFAT's website. If you have a look at the, if you do search value for money into the search engine that's there on the DFAT website, it'll draw up the relevant policy for you, but we do definitely use that standard Australian government definition with the 4 E's. Okay, I'm going to click back through to the project level information and go through that. So, top tips, things to consider when you're preparing your project level report. Remember that you are providing us an equivalent performance report against the project plan that you submitted to us in your ad plan. So it's really great to go back, have a quick look through the ad plan, have a look at what you said you were going to deliver this year, and then report against that. So where you've had a variation to your ad plan, that is totally understandable, but provide an explanation of that variation, and I'll go through that in the next slide. Also remember that we want you to tell us about the achievements. We want you to tell us about both outcomes and outputs, and using that, the way that in the ANCP team that we define outcomes and outputs. So those outcomes about the change that you're looking to make to people's lives versus outputs, which is, the activities or the tangible things that you delivered on the ground. Remember that we also want a nice, accurate record of what happened in a project. So as Heather said before, this is the audit part. What were those Australian taxpayer dollars that were provided to you used for? And finally, we want to just see some evidence that as you've gone through your project, of the different things that you've learnt along the way that are either relevant for that project or might be relevant for your broader ANCP portfolio or even for all of your development projects across your entire organisation. So the first question in the project level form that you will come to is this space for you to provide us detail on any variations as compared to your final approved ad plan. So here in the ANCP team at DFAT, we absolutely understand that there are virtually no projects, be they development projects or any type of other project, anywhere in the world that ever went precisely to plan. We absolutely get that. So here instead, we would just like for you to be frank and tell us about the changes that you did make to the project and what brought about those changes and what steps you took in order to figure out the changes that were required and the change that was then made. There's some rough information in the ANCP manual on variations to ad plans that you can have a little look at here. Of course, we would like you to highlight those variations that are at the higher level where you did change the sort of target outcomes or you ended up doing delivering different outputs to what you originally intended. Maybe you've had quite a large variation to sort of quantitative things within the project, like your beneficiary numbers or your budget. or maybe you know, the way that you've split the money, your ANCP grant, across your different projects. So do highlight that here. When we are selecting which project level forms to read for each NGO, we do run a quick report in the ANCP team of all of your ad plan data in terms of beneficiaries and dollars, and then whether or not that's changed, and we have in our report another column that then provides this variation information. So if you have a significant change in some of those quick things to look at, like dollars and beneficiaries, and then the variations box, the answer to this question is totally blank, or it says no changes, we are definitely going to dive into that project and have a little look at it to see what's different from the ad plan that you submitted to us and whether or not you've adequately described it. There's a question here that the question is, if the output numbers are insignificant, do we need to report that as a variation? So the rough guide that we give for beneficiary variations is where it's plus or minus 20%. So if it's, you know, more or less by 20% than what you put in your ad plan, that's probably where we'd expect to see you describing to us the situation that brought that about. Please definitely don't think that not having the same beneficiary numbers, whether they're up or down, is a negative thing. It's definitely not. We know that those things are going to change, and we know, especially when projects are in their early years, that, you know, you've had to make some estimates as to what those numbers are going to be. We totally get that. So please feel free to be absolutely frank in this section. It is not us judging you on a pass-fail basis by any means. You can say no variations in this box if you truly need to. If you have had one of those golden projects that have gone 100% according to plan, then that is awesome. Pop that in the box, no variations. The next questions have been separated out for the first time this year, and this is consistent with what we've done in the ad plan forms for 2017-18 for the first time, where we've separated out outcomes and outputs. So this is just to help you, or to provide you the space to distinguish between the two things, and to provide you the space to distinguish between the two things, and to, under the project outcomes, give us that qualitative information on the impact that your project is having. Now, we understand that projects at different stages in their life cycle are going to be able to say different things about outcomes. So if your project is in its last year, if it's coming to the end of its delivery, or it has finished, you're probably going to have a story, a great story, with lots of information to tell about the outcomes or the change in those communities that your project has made. If your project is more at the beginning of its project implementation journey, instead here you might like to focus on the progress that your project is having towards reaching those target outcomes, and be able to explain to DFAT what you are doing now, what you have put in place in the last year that is going to help your project get towards those sustainable outcomes. So then with the output section, this is, you know, a lot more of the sort of acquittal side of the report as opposed to the performance reporting. Here you can go back and have a look at those outputs, so whether you were going to run 10 training sessions, or whether you're going to deliver hygiene messages to 200 people, or whether you were going to hand out, you know, microfinance loans to 1,000 women, or whatever the case might be. Here you can, and using dot points is totally fine, list the main project outputs and deliverables that you had in that 17-18 financial year. The next questions, this is the same as last year, it hasn't changed, but we ask you to outline any issues or challenges that you've had in your project, and correspondingly lessons learnt. So here we really want to highlight to you the difference between, say, the risks section that you might be putting in your ad plan, where we define risks as things that might go wrong, or things that are outside of your control that you have to maybe think about that might occur. Project issues or challenges, these are things that you have actually encountered in the past year. So these unintended things that came about, you may have planned for them in your risk management strategy for the project, or you might not have. But these are things that have actually occurred, not just things that might have gone wrong. So things that actually did go wrong. Here, for example, if you have had cases that you have reported to DFAT, things along the lines of fraud cases or child protection cases that are required to be reported, we expect to see you to be listing those in this issues and challenges. We will check against our records for the program for child protection cases and fraud cases, so please don't fail to mention those in this section. And then the second part of the question is about lessons learned. So those are the lessons that you have taken away from the past year of your project, and these could be positive or negative experiences. These might have been, we implemented this certain activity and it was hugely successful, and the lesson that we've learned from that is we're going to repeat it in future years, or we're going to apply that to our project in this other country or this other sector. It can be lessons that you are going to learn within just your Australian organisation, or a lesson that your local partner or your international network might have taken away from the project successes or issues or challenges, any of the above. I've got a question here more relating to that issues and challenges about should you include near-miss situations, and I guess it depends on what that near-miss situation is, but in particular where you've had near-miss situations that have led to a lesson that your organisation or your implementing partner has learned, then that's the type of information we'd love to see you include here. This provides evidence that you are monitoring your projects, you know the kind of challenges that they're facing, and that you're adapting your project management and your project delivery accordingly within the context of your project and what's happening on the ground. Just probably a last point to you on issues and challenges and lessons learned. I mentioned to you that if you have had one of those major cases of child protection or fraud or whatever, if you're listing that as a challenge, we definitely expect to see some lessons that your organisation has taken away from that experience and what you're going to do in the future to address that challenge that has arisen last year. The next section that we go on to, these are exactly the same as previous years for our repeat visitors to the webinar today. But in the sustainability section for the project, again, we understand that depending on where your project is in its life cycle, you're going to have different things to say about the sustainability. So consider here sustainability of various things. You should be thinking about, this is the same advice that we give you at the ad plan period. You should be thinking about having sustainability measures in place to sustain the outcomes of your project. But also you need to have some sustainability maybe for some of the outputs you've delivered. So for example, if you have delivered some sort of infrastructure or upgrades to some facilities, how is that tangible infrastructure going to be maintained going into the future? If you've established some very important relationships as part of that project, maybe you've got some MOUs in place with certain stakeholders or whatever, how is that going to be maintained after your project has been delivered? Similarly, formalising some of those relationships can also be a measure of how your project outcomes are going to be sustainable at the end of the project. So, for example, if you're building the service delivery capacity of a health institution, you might have signed an MOU with the local provincial health authority that says they're going to take on responsibility for continuing to improve those health services after your project ends, something like that. And you might want to specify here too, especially projects as they come into their final years, any aftercare or follow-up that your organisation or your local implementing partners or whatever might be doing with your project participants down the line. The next section is about innovation, and if you select yes, your project involved innovation, then the question at the bottom will open up and provide you 200-word space to specify the type of innovative approach that your project used and to give us some information on your innovation at a specific project level. Some of the next questions, again, the private sector question is another one of those questions where if you say yes, okay, I'm going to jump back just to answer the question that we've had. So we've had a question here as to what's an example of innovation, and I guess it very much depends on the type of project that you're delivering. So many people, when they think of innovation, they think of some whiz-bang technological approach that might have been applied to their project, and that's great. We've got many NGOs who are using technology in new ways to find solutions to things like birth registration or cash transfers in emergencies or whatever, and that, of course, is innovation. But innovation might be something quite separate as well, depending on your your project's activities. So if you are doing something that is very new for your implementing partner, if they've never used savings groups before, or savings groups have never been used in that country or that province where you're working, then for those participants in your program and for your local implementing partner, that might have been an innovative approach. If you are interested in innovation, there was a DFAT presented webinar on how DFAT views innovation, and that was given in the middle of last month. So I'm sure if you jump on the ACKNOWLEDGEMENT YouTube channel, you can have a look back at that DFAT presented webinar on innovation and the kind of things that we would consider to be innovative. But definitely innovation means something different to everyone, and don't be scared if you think something's been unique for the first time that you've tried it or your partners have tried it, then don't be scared to include that in your performance report. I've gone too far. I'm jumping back to the private sector question, and again, this is another question where if you click yes that you've involved the private sector, it's going to ask you some data-oriented questions about how many organisations you're engaged with, and then give you a little bit of space to talk about the pros and cons or successes and challenges of engaging with those private sector organisations. The next question is again the same as last year. It's a chance for you to tell us specifically for this project how you acknowledged Australian government support to this project that you've implemented. Please, we really do ask here that you don't give a generic answer that you insert in every single project level form. Here we would like to see something that is specific to this project about how you implemented the branding guidelines and the type of information that is included in the Acknowledging Australian Government Support section of the ANCP manual. So you've got 100 words to tell us. You can use bullet points here to tell us if you are, talking about it in presentations or speeches. And then there is also the opportunity, it's optional, to upload a file. A photo file is the only thing that you're really able to upload here. You can add multiple photos by using the little plus and minus buttons that are down the bottom of this question if you have a couple of photo files that you'd like to add. And here this might be, a photo of the opening of your new facility where the banner in the background uses the Australian Aid branding, or if you've presented certificates to your participants in a training session and it's got the Australian Aid branding on it, you might have a photo of the presentation of that. If you have a video for your project that you would like to include, then the best way to give us that information about a video here, because it won't let you upload a video file, instead you're better off putting that on your organisation's YouTube channel or social media channel, and in the text box putting the URL for that there for us. Unfortunately, we don't have access in DFAT to any sort of file sharing methods, so we can't access those, unfortunately, and the Smart Event system just not big enough to host video files at the moment. The next section, then Heather spoke at the header level about how you talk about cross-cutting issues and inclusive development broadly across your organisation and your ANCP portfolio. But here now at the project level, this is your chance to tell us specifically for this project about how your project addressed barriers to inclusion and opportunities for everybody of all, genders and abilities and cultural backgrounds to be able to participate in this project. Here, give us some evidence on how you applied those cross-cutting issues and how you ensured that the participation of everyone was possible in that project. The next couple of questions again are the same as last year. So here we're talking about the OECD DAC gender equality policy marker, and then also correspondingly the disability, the OECD DAC disability marker. Last year, for the first time, we provided you an opportunity at your performance report to revise the gender or disability marker for the project that you had included in the ad plan. So if your 12 months has passed and you feel that the marker that you put in your ad plan is not the correct one and you wanted to revise it, then this provides you with the opportunity to do that. I think many of you would have seen, would have received feedback in your ad plan last year about the gender and disability markers that you used. Maybe you've received feedback in this year's ad plan as well, maybe in last year's performance report. So do have a look at that and consider if you'd like to change it. The OECD definitions in gender in particular are very detailed. So do read that. I know it's a lot of text, but do read that text in the form. And the type of detailed guidance that's provided for the gender equality policy marker could equally be applied to the disability marker, even though the disability marker has a lot less text in it. Some of the final parts of the form are very data-oriented. They're quite straightforward and they're similar to last year, or they're similar to what you're seeing in the ad plan report. So first up, with your total beneficiary data, in the expected from the ad plan, the ANCP online system will automatically extract the number of total expected beneficiaries and populate this box here, this expected number of beneficiaries in the ad plan. And then the actual beneficiaries, total direct beneficiaries that you received, this will be tallied up from the following boxes, disaggregated boxes that are underneath. So when you disaggregate your actual beneficiaries by sex, age and people with a disability, you're going to use this same format that you've been using in your 2018-19 ad plans, and it's automatically going to tally up the direct total number of beneficiaries for you. Again, here we're using the same form. We've added in the third gender for you to report against if your organisation is collecting that data. If you're not currently collecting that data, you just need to pop a 0 in the box so that the automatic calculations will still work. Then again, we ask you to do that same disaggregation for urban and rural, and the system will automatically check that the numbers continue to add up to the total. And then finally, it's going to ask you about Indigenous people and ethnic minorities. Finally, there's a yes or no question for family planning activities. So if you click yes that there were family planning activities in your project, it's then going to ask you to disaggregate by sex that data for people, number of people participating in family planning activities. The next section is on DAC codes. What you will see here is that the DAC codes that you entered in the ad plan will be displayed here for you. It's just a reminder for you. If you feel that that you need to change the DAC codes that you originally put in your ad plan, then you will need to get in touch with the ANCP team, and those would need to be adjusted in your ad plan. So, you know, we don't allow you to change them at performance report time, because we feel if you're changing the DAC codes, it might be because you've significantly changed the focus of your project. So that's why we'll ask you to change it in your ad plan rather than here. But this is just provided so that you can check to see that you are still reporting against the most accurate DAC codes for that project. The next section of the report goes into the finances, where you can tell us the actual amount that you spent on this project and the actual amount of rollover that you spent and any interest that you earned and then spent. These figures that you enter here will be automatically tallied up into the header level, as Heather mentioned earlier, to make sure that you're accounting for every ANCP dollar that's been granted to you in the 17-18 year. Another thing to note is that many NGOs, after submitting their performance report and acquittal, will need to go back and update the rollover amounts that you gave us in your 2018-19 ad plan. So that is normal. Our team will be checking for where the rollovers that you tally up in your performance report is equal to the amount of rollover dollars that you included in your 2018-19 ad plan. And where those two amounts don't add up, they will ask you which projects in your 2018-19 ad plan you need to adjust, and opening up those ad plan forms for you to make those adjustments. So probably each year about 50% or more of the NGOs need to adjust their rollover amount. So if we come to you and ask you to do that, you're definitely not alone, and it's not unusual. Finally, if you've got a multi-country project, we will ask you, if you click on that box saying, is this project working in more than one country, then that will open up this box for you to give us a breakdown of dollars that you spent or could be, attributed to each country and the number of beneficiaries per country. And this really helps DFAT provide a breakdown of how many aid dollars are going to different ODA countries. So thank you very much for doing this. Right underneath this question with the funding breakdown of countries, there is an other information question that's just a text box. So if you've got text-based information that you can't fit in one of the other boxes, one of the other response fields that we've provided you in the form, then the other information is there for you to use it if you need it. So if you feel you've got something we need to know that you either couldn't fit in elsewhere or didn't belong under another heading, then please pop it in that other information section. Final part of the form is the evaluation section. So if during the reporting period you have undertaken a project level evaluation for that project, then this is the place for you to tell us all about it. The one thing to note here is in the question that opens up, if you say, yes, I've completed the evaluation, if you are talking about the evaluation findings summary, here please don't give us a summary of the methodology of the evaluation that you undertook. Instead, spell out for us here the main recommendations and outcomes of your evaluation that you undertook, and also then how you've applied those recommendations or those learnings to either your project that's still in process or more broadly across your ANCP portfolio or within your international network. Also, too, if you've got some really fantastic outcomes that the project has achieved that has been confirmed by your evaluation, don't save that information up and put it here in the evaluation section. Instead, insert it right in that second question about the outcomes of your project. Put that information there at the outcomes level. So we may not have the time to open up every single project level evaluation and read through those often very detailed and fantastic high-level reports that you give us, the evaluation reports. So instead, take the highlights of the things that have been confirmed and pop that in your outcomes reporting section. Then the remainder of the project level form, you will know, is the indicators section, and as you go through and click on the different indicators that you would like to report against, it's going to give you the breakdown for a number of those, depending on what the indicator is for disaggregated data and the type of information. It's quite self-explanatory. When you click on the different box, things will open. A reminder that when you're filling out indicators that you might have, if you were to tally up all of the beneficiaries associated with your indicators, that could possibly be more than your total beneficiaries. So if you've had women that have participated both in your agricultural training and also in a savings club, yes, you're going to count them twice against the indicator, but it doesn't mean that you need to double count them at the beneficiary level because they are still just one person after all. So please feel free to ask any questions that you have on the project level form. And while you're thinking of any project level questions that you might have, I'll quickly go through some mechanics about performance reports. A reminder that at the header level, you'll need to have your authorising officer within your organisation tick the relevant boxes, sign the form. You will have to scan that form and attach it to your header level report. And the reason that we get you to do that is so that you can provide us evidence that there is executive oversight of your organisation's senior executive on that performance report and acquittal that you're providing to DFAT. So please remember to fill that out correctly and attach it. Performance reports are due, like they are every single year, on the 30th of September at 5 p.m. This year that happens to fall on a Sunday, and the date will be left there on the Sunday because next year will be Monday. But it still says 2017 there, which is totally wrong, my bad, 2018, so Sunday the 30th of September 2018. And please, we know that there are some public holidays, in Victoria, the Friday beforehand is a public holiday. In the ACT New South Wales, I think the following Monday is a public holiday. So make allowances for those public holidays to make sure that you get your performance report in on time. There will only be support from the DFAT team and the Smarty Grants team up until the close of business on Friday the 28th of September. So if you are planning on hitting submit on Saturday or Sunday and you have any technical issues, please know that there won't be anyone available to help you with those technical issues. So in other words, it's really best by that Friday, the 28th of September, to have things sorted. Finally, if you have any questions at all, the best initial contact place is the ANCP team, and we can be contacted via ancp@dfat.gov.au or 02 61785 888. They're the best numbers to go to rather than individuals you might know within the team, because that way if someone's on leave or not in the office, someone will be available to answer your question. If you have any very ANCP online, very specific Smarty Grants questions, then you can go direct to Glenn and Jess in our Smarty Grants team via smartygrants@dfat.gov.au. If you're not sure if it's a policy question or a technical question, then please do come to the ANCP team first, because the Smarty Grants team cannot help you with questions like what type of information should I include in the outcomes section. They won't be able to assist you with that. The URL for the 2017-18 round that you need to enter to access your performance reports is down there at the bottom of the page. So please enter that URL specifically, and then once you're into that 17-18 round, you should have access to your acquittal tab under your ad plan for 2017-18. So that's all from us today. As we mentioned at the beginning, we'll definitely be sending these slides out to you by the end of August. We will be presenting the performance report face-to-face information sessions along with those other information sessions on the 20th and 23rd of August. We look forward to seeing all of you there, and also at Annual Reflections in Sydney and Melbourne. And if you have any questions, you've probably got 1 minute left to answer them. Otherwise, please do contact us at any time at the ANCP team. You know we love to have a chat. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Brilliant. Thanks, Majdie, and thanks, Heather. We might have questions coming through. If any do come through, because we've reached the limit of our webinar time, we'll make sure that those get to the ANCP team and your questions are answered. Before we close the webinar, I'm just going to remind everyone to stay on board and do the really quick 5-question survey that will open up when we close the webinar. I'm also going to give a really quick plug to open up when we close the webinar. I'm also going to give a really quick plug to the ACKFED conference. We've just launched registrations for this year's ACKFED conference. I'll include a link in the survey so that you can go directly and see all the amazing things that we're doing in our program. But other than that, thank you everybody for attending. It's great to see so many here in the webinar today, and hopefully we'll see you at future webinars.